Y'all, I have to admit, I was so ready to hate on the It Ends With Us movie. I've been critical of it since we've gotten the casting announcement,
But I'm also not really a fan of like making something crappy when you could have made something good.
but then the trailer rolled around. It might have just been my tears ricochet, but it kind of caught me by surprise because it looked really good. And now that I've seen the movie, I couldn't be more happy to take back those words and admit that I was wrong. If you are unfamiliar, It Ends With Us is based on an incredibly popular best-selling novel by the same name written by Colleen Hoover. It was one of the OG book talk books, if you are familiar with that community. It Ends With Us follows Lily Bloom, a aspiring flower shop owner who falls for a mysterious neurosurgeon named Ryle, until his volatile emotions place Lily in danger, and the only person that she can turn to is her childhood lover, Atlas, a rising star in the culinary world. I read the book. I'm going to open with that. The film follows the book very well. Like, book fans are going to be so impressed with this, which is crazy because one of my biggest criticisms going into this film, or my assumptions about it, is that Colleen Hoover as an executive producer and those who are also working on the film, such as Justin Baldoni, who plays Ryle but is also the director of this film, and Blake Lively, who is a producer on this film but is also Lily, that almost like everyone was just changing some crucial elements of the story, such as the character's age and kind of where they are in life. And a lot of people thought that that was going to really weaken the story, but I think what's really great here is that they really did stick to the book. Like, the plot pretty much beat for beat that I can remember. Even some of the smaller details or things that people kind of joke about online with this book, such as Letters to Ellen and Finding Nemo, if you know, you know. There are little Easter egg hints to things like that in the book that I think you will find as the story unfolds. Really, the details were paid attention to here. And I think that's one thing that I want to state more than anything, is this story is one that demands to be handled with care. And I'm so happy to say that the people who worked on this film really did step up to the plate. From the directing to the sound design, the editing, everything really is done in a way to make this story feel as real and multifaceted and layered, rather than just two-dimensional characters who have a thing happen to them because that's what the plot requires. They really feel like characters who we see grow over the course of the film. We see change, we see some of them fall. Getting to root for Lily in particular is such a triumph in this film. Like, as an audience member, you feel so deeply connected to her, and I definitely did not feel this connected to Lily in the book, which I think is such a great aspect and compliment not only to the film, but to Blake Lively herself. I think there's a beauty in casting someone who is so universally loved, admired, revered as this gorgeous, wonderful voice, this person who is a mother in real life, who is such a public and loving relationship, and to get to see her in this role where she is grounded and quirky, but there's kind of a part of her that you just end up falling in love with. And I think that's something that only somebody like Blake Lively, who is so likable, can bring to this role, because I think the importance of relating to Lily is realizing that this story isn't one that just happens to a specific subset of people or a specific type of woman. It's something that's possible for anyone, and that you don't realize what it's like to go through something like this until you experience it yourself. Not only is Blake Lively great, Justin Baldoni is wonderful. I'm a huge fan of his ever since the Jane the Virgin days. Even though I was Team Michael, I loved him as Raphael, and so seeing him in this role, it was very easy to see him as attractive and mysterious and interesting, but he plays the role of Ryle with this level of uncontrolled rage that you kind of see from the beginning of when he's introduced as a character. And the way that he's able to kind of layer that in some of his performances, even when he's supposed to be likable, add a level of uneasiness for the viewer, is so expertly done. And then I absolutely cannot apologize more to Brandon Sklenar, who plays Atlas Corrigan. This man was so perfect for this role. Like, when I tell you that the moment he shows up on screen, it's just his voice, and immediately there is a shift. Again, it's the way that the whole film culminates in these very important book moments that I think book fans are really going to appreciate. But there's something about his performance that is so realistic to a character that is otherwise kind of perfect. Brandon plays him with this level of weight that I think the character is supposed to have based on his past. He feels like a real person, and I think that's so dumb to say, but I think one thing that I felt in Colleen Hoover's books is that there's often a plot that is happening, and sometimes it's not necessarily that the characters are like so complex. At least for me, it was sort of just like I remember the story, but in this movie I walked away feeling so connected to these characters and really bought into kind of the different levels of grief and processing trauma and love and emotions that are going into all of these characters. I also have to mention, because I'm on the cast and giving them all of their roses, that Jenny Slate and Hassan Minhaj, they did such a great job being the comedic relief and levity of this film, and also playing a purpose within the plot of their characters are meant to almost normalize some of the other situations without excusing the behavior that's going on in Lily and Ryle's relationship. They are able to be there and make you feel as an audience member that like nothing bad can happen when they're around, and therefore anytime they are absent, not only does the comedy leave the room, but almost Lily's kind of safety in the film disappears. And I think it's a really interesting way to see how these characters being so close and loving Lily and Ryle really does explain why someone might start to excuse behavior like this, despite the fact that it is so clearly wrong. And now I feel like I have to get into it, is the one thing about this film that I think people are most concerned about, and that is whether or not it romanticizes the domestic violence at its core. And I am very relieved to say that I don't believe that it's romanticized at all. At every point in the story, there's at least one character that makes some type of comment like, this is wrong, this is not okay, or comments negatively towards the abuse that is happening in a way that is saying, get out, do not accept this behavior, this is not love, this is not what that looks like. And I think that's so important because, especially with a film that's as star-studded as this one, with Blake Lively being as popular as she is, I think it could so easily get swept under the rug to allow this type of romance to go on. But I think the story in itself does not romanticize this abuse, and this movie in particular really takes extra steps to make sure that you as an audience feel the impact of the abuse. It feels visceral. It feels like something that you can't forgive as an audience member, and then to have that kind of backed up by things that are diegetically being said by characters in the story to explain that this is not okay, even if certain characters choose to ignore that advice, it's there. And I think that's really important. And again, I cannot stress enough how much this adaptation was handled with so much care, not just of the source material, but of the general story and for people who are survivors of this level of abuse. I also really want to touch on the fact that I think the dual timeline here is handled so well. Like, this is something that I think is kind of my fear with a lot of popular books that have split POVs or dual timelines, because we don't necessarily always see that handled well on screen. Sometimes there will just opt to be showing everything in chronological order or some voiceover narration, and here it is done in ways that feel really natural, that pop up when the character of Lily is reflecting on her past naturally, so it feels like a easy transition rather than a abrupt change to a different timeline. The two things that I want to commend this film for the most in regards to that specific like past timeline is one, the casting. The casting of both Atlas and Lily in the past timeline. Holy cows, it's so spot on. And I cannot believe that that woman that plays a young Lily is not Blake Lively's daughter or sister or biological twin or clone, because they look so similar. That's number one. Great casting. But almost more importantly, the color grading of this, and I'm gonna get really nerdy for a second, is handled so well, because often when people have a split timeline where they refer back to childhood, there is a warmer tone to that childhood that kind of takes you into a more romanticized time. But in this story in particular, the past that Lily and Atlas experience together while being the start of their love story is not a happy time and not one to be romanticized. And so the color grading at this point in the movie is a little bit more yellow. It kind of has a vintage feel and look to it, but it's almost like someone took the color grading tool and turned the yellow up as well as the green. It makes it look very stylized this period of time, but I think that's important because it makes it, one, distinctly different from the main storyline in the current timeline, but it also allows you to feel a level of unease that like this wasn't a perfect thing either that was happening, and it really allows for the end of the film to come out with a different color palette, color mapping, and like grading style that feels a little bit more hopeful. So the actual visuals on screen really are aiding the emotional levels in this film, and I think that's really important for a story like this, to really take any type of tool you have at your disposal in an audiovisual medium like film to really emphasize what is happening to these characters and if that is okay or not. And I think they did a really great job with this, specifically in that old timeline. However, the one con I have, I think, comes from the fact that this is a dual timeline story, and that's that the pacing of this film feels a little bit slow. I have to be honest, because I have read the book, I don't know if I was waiting for specific scenes to happen or thinking that they happened earlier in the book, and therefore it felt like the pacing was a little bit off and slow to me. I remember looking at my watch at about 8:30, an hour and a half after the film had started, and I felt like, oh wow, this is going going to be a long movie, and I honestly don't know the time that it got out. I would say that this film is probably like a little bit over 2 hours, which feels a little bit long, but because it is a drama and because it adapts the book so faithfully and really emphasizes not glossing over important conversations that need to be had in this film to kind of wrap it up in a successful way, I feel like I'm gonna excuse that. However, I will say, as like a very technical aspect of the film, there is a while there where you're kind of like, okay, where is this going? But I'd be interested to know for you, if you're just seeing this film and haven't read the book, or maybe even if you have, did this feel a little bit slow to you? Please let me know below. But I genuinely feel like any criticism I had before the movie, I just don't anymore. And I like really enjoyed this film. And trust me, there was a point in time when I wanted nothing more than to come out and be like, this is not how you adapt a movie. But I'm actually so glad that it didn't turn out to be that way, because Hollywood loves to snatch up a great bestseller and adapt it. And some of my personal favorite books of the last couple years are in a pipeline to at some point be adapted. And it really means a lot to me to know that we are in a point in time when films can be faithfully adapted from their source material, can really honor the subject matter, and also really please fans of the original while also drawing in new fans. I think that's such a wonderful thing, and I can't wait to see more books be adapted if they're going to be as well adapted as this one was. Please let me know your thoughts on It Ends With Us, the book, the movie, the combo, anything in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this review, I do reviews of all the newest TV shows and movies, as well as some entertainment news and pop culture recommendations, so you're not going to want to miss anything. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I so appreciate you all. Have a wonderful day or night whenever you're getting to watch this, and I'll see y'all in my very next video. Bye, guys.